So thank you all for the opportunity to present today. We're the Girrup team, and on behalf of the team, I'll be presenting our solution for addressing two of the biggest challenges we face today: unequitable access to the outdoors and patterns of overconsumption that are jeopardizing our environment. As a group, Vaibhav, Mavendra, and myself come from different backgrounds, but we all share a very deep connection with the outdoors. For my part, I know I've gained self-esteem, respect for my body, and a deeper appreciation for my place in the world simply because of my time in the outdoors. And I'm guessing if I asked all of you on this call, you all could probably think of at least a few instances or a few ways your time in the outdoors has positively impacted your life as well. But here's the rub. As much as we want to believe that the opportunity to adventure is equal, this simply isn't true. And after over 40 hours of conversations with dozens of stakeholders in and around the outdoor recreation space, our conversations kept pointing to a fundamental barrier, which is that great adventures require great gear. Unfortunately, we have a really bad relationship when it comes to gear, and so we end up solving our gear issues in three major ways. First is that we bite the bullet and we purchase the gear, but we often underutilize it. And this is not only financially inefficient, but it also is detrimental to the environment. Second is that we rent gear, but we don't enjoy the experience. From uninviting rental spaces to being offered gear that's visibly towards the end of its life, we find that there's still a lot left to be desired. And third, and most concerning to us, is that sometimes we decide that the view is not worth the climb, and we simply don't do it at all. It's another means of exclusion. And so our options really aren't much of options at all at this point. But what if there was a different way? What if there was a better way? What if instead we invited aspiring adventurers into a community with the individuals that own the underutilized gear? And it was this dangerous question that led us to creating Girrup, a peer-to-peer sharing platform for the outdoor space that takes the former limits of the sharing economy and basically throws them out the window. Using Girrup, adventure seekers will not only be able to search, select, and book pieces of gear that they've never had access to before, but they'll also be given the ability to connect and explore like never before. Up until this point, the sharing economy has been exclusively reserved for extremely high capital items like apartments and cars. So think of Airbnb and Turo. Girrup leans into the fact that usefulness, not how expensive something is the most important condition for a sharing economy. That's why users will not only be able to list large items like bikes, skis, and surfboards on the platform, but also smaller items and clothing like ski jackets and goggles. In this way, Girrup will be supportive of everyone from first-time adventurers to experienced veterans that are going on a unique adventure. Moreover, because of Girrup's intentional focus on community, gear owners and adventurers will be able to craft experiences together, from route advice that comes best from local experience to arranging flexible pickup and even recovery. Girrup will be positioned to be the most inviting place to plan and execute an adventure. So what kind of adventures could we expect from Girrup to help with? We see four in particular that really stick out to us. First is instances where someone's looking to learn a new sport, but wanting to be mindful of the way that they invest and get into that sport. Second is during travel. We heard from our interviews how cumbersome and detrimental it is to ship gear all across the world. Girrup eases this tension through community. Third is for novel adventures. It's expensive to try something new, and we heard time and time and again that we needed a fix for this. And finally, there are adventures that really are conscious minimalists, and this will help support a low impact lifestyle. We recognize that even having these use cases, our renter group is also going to have a unique set of requirements, which is why we've also focused on building a portfolio of protection that we feel is really unrivaled. In particular, we've capitalized on permissive use policies to make sure that we give protection to gear owners, not only from damage and theft, but also against personal liability that would typically be incurred in the event of an accident. Further, we know to make the outdoors truly accessible and inclusive, it means more than just covering the liability. We have to do more than that. And so we also are offering features like share your location and a video library for education. Lastly, we'll have our Girrup support team as a last line of defense to help facilitate claims and sticky issues. So it's at this point that you might be thinking, yeah, that's all good and great, but don't secondhand sites like Craigslist already fix the problem? And this is where we think that Girrup has a real edge. Currently, users use their gear only about 20% of the time. And while secondhand sites like Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace do a little bit to help improve this, maybe marginally increasing the utilization, they also only just swap people out of the haves and have not groups. What Girrup does and what is fundamentally different is it addresses both of those weaknesses by creating greater access by inviting others in and drastically increasing the utilization of assets. We're lowering barriers to access and decreasing the need to overconsume. To execute on this vision, we plan on reaching a few key milestones. In particular, we know that we need to put an operational minimum viable product in front of suppliers and consumers, and then we'll move to the task of onboarding our first suppliers. Once we have a sufficient supply base, we'll launch our summer pilot, where we'll be tracking key social and business metrics in order to inform our more eventual design of a custom-built platform. Last on our list is to expand our offerings. We're really optimistic that the micro-sharing economy is accessible to other areas, and we really are excited about those opportunities. So this leads us to what still needs to be addressed. We've got 3 key requirements that are standing in our way. And the first is to build a platform that's capable of delivering our value proposition that we've outlined. The second is a committed set of partners that will enable us to accomplish our early trial. And then ultimately, the last one is to get enough capital to overcome the inevitable high acquisition costs that are associated with informing and incentivizing early adopters. The good news is that we have done a great job of meeting the first 2, but we still need some help with the last one. So this leads me to the last piece, which is that it's been amazing to share with you all today, because I know if we get this right, solving this problem will do so much more than just improve access to the outdoor and decrease overconsumption. So what do you say? Why don't we open up some adventures? Because adventure is for everyone.
Woohoo! Thank you. Panel, who would like to jump in?
I can start. Thanks for a really great presentation. As somebody that went skiing for the first time when I was a grad student at Michigan, I can understand the value of something like this for sure. I'm curious what your thoughts are as you're thinking through liability and insurance.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts around like the different types of experiences, and also as you go to different places, for example, US versus international, I'm curious what thinking is going into this process right now as you're addressing that.
Yeah, this is maybe number 1 issue that we hear most of. And so we've spent a lot of time thinking about it, but would certainly welcome additional thoughts. So if you have additional thoughts, please send them my way. We're very open to this. Initially, our pilot will focus on the United States because that's where, quite frankly, the infrastructure is built out for insurance at this point. To do the international, which is our ultimate hope, especially for those travelers, that is a sticky piece. That's the way that we get to that, or the way that our conversations with our insurance experts have basically been built up to this point, is that they are willing to support a platform like this, but they need to show, there needs to be evidence that there's enough renters and this is happening with enough consistency in order to create a program for that. And so that's really why our rollout model is to start small, start in Ann Arbor. We want to see this come to fruition in a pattern of where we have a pattern of renters that is consistent, and we can kind of show that. And then ultimately come back to those rental experts and say, hey, this is the patterns that we're seeing, this is the type of liability coverage that we're looking for, and ultimately craft that collectively with those groups. So initially we're working with what we've got, but it is our long-term plan to build up a basis that we could expand this much further. Does that answer the question?
It does, thanks.
Okay, perfect.
I had a comment and then a question. So my comment,
Okay.
more feedback. So I think like the potential impact is definitely there, right? Like instead of purchasing something new every time, reusing equipment. I think that's something that you could highlight more, especially in this type of presentation where, you know, the impact piece is very important. There's probably more like stats and just a way to highlight that a little bit more. But, you know, I thought you did it's a really strong presentation overall. I love how that you focus your potential users on use cases versus demographics. I think that's a really great way to do that. But you also have a lot of different use cases. So can you talk a little bit about like maybe which one you would approach, like which one you would target first? Because I imagine the product could look slightly different or maybe be tweaked as you add on different use cases.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Thank you. Thank you for asking that, because with a short amount of time, we can only go into that to so much detail. So rather than trying to bite off the whole enchilada and do every type of product, we are going to focus on bikes because we have the greatest infrastructure for that. Not only that, is we think that we can create the most compelling product for the bike market and then expand outwards. So I mentioned before, insurance is a big piece of all of this, and I highlighted in the deck that Velo Insurance, they actually are entirely focused on bikes right now. And so we can get into that market very efficiently, cover the individuals at a very high level, and then we can ultimately feed a good number of the use cases that we already talked about. So across bikes, I don't think that there's too much differentiation in terms of things like your traveler versus your experienced. Now, first-time users, we've done a little bit more work with first-time users to make sure that the renters that are going to be renting out to first-time users have additional training. We're actually going to like kind of denote, like think of like a super host or a super rentor. Basically, they're going to have additional training and additional support for those first-time renters. But Sarika, to get back to your initial question, we're going to focus on bikes, but across those 4 different categories is going to be the way that we'll roll out.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I would just, again, some feedback, the marketing piece will be very different on the based on the type of user. Yeah. So you do want to think about like within those use cases, who would you go for first, because you'll be marketing it very differently.
Yes, thank you for that point as well. Yep, agreed.
I have another question, but I don't want to overstep you. And if you have
go for it. Go for it.
Okay, so one question that I have is trying to decide which one I'm going to choose.
Okay.
So, okay, I'll choose this one. Can you talk a little bit about pricing, what your thoughts are currently around pricing?
Yeah, definitely. Actually have a bit of kind of what we're thinking of in terms of a business model. So this is a very aspirational business model. Pay more attention to the 10% commission and the average fee that we're targeting, less so to the revenue targets, because those are audacious, and that's our hope at this point. But the goal is to to fund this is to get to a 10% commission on each transaction. Now, what that means is a few things. What our hope is that by expanding the range of options, we're going to increase supply. And anytime that you increase supply substantially, that comes with a market decrease in cost. And so our aspiration is to, yes, take a commission on each transaction in order to fund this, but we're also hoping that we are able to draw the price of average rentals down consistently. So part of our goal is to have high quality items on the platform. We're really interested in making sure that the items are of desire. Like, we don't want, what we've heard from our interviews is we don't want this to end up being the worst parts of Craigslist, where it's just a bunch of junk that ends up on the platform. And so there is a balance that we have to maintain in terms of making sure that we have high quality product, but is priced more efficiently than our competitors. And so that was also part of the acquisition cost that we talked about being a little bit high to start, is we understand that we're probably going to have to play a vital role in lowering the cost initially as we roll this out. But eventually, as I mentioned, we're hoping that because of the market increase in volume that's coming into this market, that will eventually lower the average cost of renting.
Love the concept, love the vision for impact. I think one of my questions here is when I see other platforms such as, not such as this, but
Mhm.
they often come into the market trying to say this is, less expensive, more accessible than something else. Maybe I think back to the early days of an Airbnb, but I then see that, prices have increased as they have shifted the market. It has become more of a premium offering for many. And I'd say, not necessarily accomplishing their vision. So, what is your plan to kind of make the impact sustainable, or how have you thought about making sure that that impact is sustainable over time?
Yeah, Ian, just want to highlight, Aaron did a session entirely about sustainability. And so this was at the forefront of all of our minds when we were thinking about that. This is the very interesting problem that it is, the short answer is it's very much in the front of our minds. And we understand that we have a pattern that we can look at others who have not done it well. And not to say that Airbnb isn't a very good company, they're very successful, but we also see the repercussions or the long lasting implications. And so a few things that we're very mindful of is rebound effect. So just because of the fact that with specifically Uber was able to create this great new option, but then a lot of people are now taking rides that they never would have otherwise, or they would have walked. And so there's a rebound effect that is associated with that. Education is a big piece of the way that we want to do that. We want to also have so education through our website and the way that we design the product, but also just want to be intentional that we will take less profit. We are willing to take less profit in order to continue to meet our goals, especially the way that this venture is set up right now. We are not looking to just go after profit. We our fundamental vision for this is to make adventure accessible for everybody. And if we're out of line with that vision, we're not going to do it. So I know that that's a little bit broad of an answer, but we're very conscious of the fact that these can be manipulated into just premium products. And that's not our aspiration with this one.